Comparing fractions. Today I will be using equivalent fractions to compare two fractions using greater than, less than, or the equal sign. I'm going to start by writing out my fraction. Let's say I have 4/5, and I want to compare that to 5/6. Now, the first thing I need to do is notice that in order for me to compare these two fractions, my denominators have to be alike, and they're not. So I need to find the lowest common denominator, and I do that by writing the multiples of 5 and writing the multiples of 6, which are my two denominators. So I'm going to start by saying 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the number 6 until I get to a number that these two have in common. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and I'm going to stop right there. The reason I'm stopping right there is because I see that the smallest number that they have in common is 30. So I am going to rewrite this fraction with the new denominator of 30. Now, that's one part. The next part is, okay, I have to ask myself, this is my lowest common denominator, I have to ask myself, 5 times what will give me 30? If this is going to be my new denominator, I'm going to take this number and multiply it times something to get 30. And the answer to that is 6. 6 times 5 equals 30. And then whatever I do on the bottom, I have to do on the top. 6 times 4 is 24. I do the same thing on this side. 6 times what equals 30? And that would be 5. And then whatever I do on this, on the bottom, I have to do on the top. 5 times 5 is 25. Now that my denominators are the same, because I have written equivalent fractions, 4/5 and 24/30 are equivalent fractions. They have the same value. 5/6 and 25/30 are equivalent fractions. They also have the same value. So now that my denominators are the same, then I can say, okay, 24 and 25. 25 is larger than 24, so I will be using the less than symbol. 24/30 is less than 25/30. So I can also compare this fraction the same way because these two are equivalent. 4/5 is less than 5/6. Let's try another example. Let's say I have 7/8 and 1/2. So the first thing I notice is I don't have the same denominators. So I need to find their lowest common denominator. So again, I start with 8 and 2, and I'm just going to write a few multiples of both of them until I find one that they have in common. So 8, 16, and I'm going to stop right there. Now I'm going to do the same thing with 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I'm going to stop right there because I can see that the first number that they have in common, the lowest one, is the number 8. So when I come over on this side and rewrite my fractions, because I have a brand new denominator, then my new denominator will be 8. So now I have to ask myself, 8 times what equals 8? And that would be 1. So whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 7 times 1 equals 7. Now I do this side. 2 times what equals 8? That would be 4. And whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. 1 times 4 equals 4. Now I'm ready to compare because my denominators are alike. And I can tell that 7 is greater than 4, so I will use the greater than symbol. 7/8 is greater than 4/8. Now, because this fraction is equivalent to this one, it's the same one, and 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8, then my symbol up here is the same as this one. 7/8 is greater than 1/2. All right, let's try one more example. Let's do 9/12 and 3/4. Again, I can tell that my denominators are not alike, which means I have to find a new lowest common denominator, and I do that by writing my multiples of the denominators and see which one they have that's in common. That's the smallest one. So this would be 4, and counting by 4s, 8, and 12. And I'm going to stop right there because I see that this 12 and this 12 is the number they have in common. So the lowest common denominator here is 12. So now I'm going to rewrite my fraction. And I have to ask myself, 12 times what equals 12? And that would be 1. And then whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 9 times 1 is 9. Now to this fraction. 4 times what is 12? And if you forget, you can come over here and say, oh, 1, 2, 3. 4 times 3 equals 12. And then whatever I do to the denominator, I also have to do to the numerator. 3 times 3 is 9. Now my denominators are alike. So I can come to my numerators and compare those. I have a 9 and a 9. These two numbers are equal. Now, since 9/12 is the same as 9/12, and 3/4 is an equivalent fraction to 9/12, then 9/12 is equal to 3/4. These two are equal even though you see different numbers because of the equivalent fractions. All right, now I'm going to write a few problems right here. This is where you would get a sheet of paper and try a few examples on your own. I'm going to write 4 problems. All right, so now I want you to try these. Copy the problems down on your piece of paper, any piece of paper. Find the lowest common denominator and compare the fractions using, let's see if I can write this, greater than, less than, or the equal sign. And then bring it to class and I will check it for you. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped.